VC, how's it going? Right, okay. Just want to make a quick video. This is on the back of a video that I saw by Sherv, Julius Jabbar, probably a couple of weeks ago now, where he was talking about 21st century soul, funk and jazz records. And I think the point that he was making was that he doesn't just listen to music that's 40 or 50 years old. I think because many of us are buying records in charity shops or at thrift stores, you know, a lot of the records that we find tend to be older. So that tends to be a lot of the focus. My favourite type of music is soul music, so obviously automatically you're looking at 60s and 70s soul music. But I thought it might be just a nice idea just to show a handful of records from this century. Mainly stuff from the last 10 years or so, but perhaps one or two that are a little bit older than that. But I'm only going to show 4 or 5 records and then do needle drops on each of them at the end. So first up, this is an album by a band called Temu. The album's called Relic of the Mothership. Now, I think probably a year or two now, I showed and did a needle drop on a version of The Robots by Kraftwerk, done by Temu, which was a little bit like Kraftwerk crossed with Zapp. It was certainly a funky version of the tune. But so this is an album of original material. I didn't know anything about this, but I saw Secca Funk, who's obviously started making records, making videos again, show this in a recent video, so I picked it up. Obviously from the title you can tell it owes a lot to Parliament Funkadelic, George Clinton, P-Funk, that whole thing, you know. But there's also a Prince influence in there. I'll perhaps do a needle drop on the tune that owes a little bit to Prince. But yeah, it's a really nice album. But what's good about it is it's updated the sound. So it's not just a straight copy of that P-Funk sound. It has tried to update the sound, and I think it's a really nice record. Came out at the end of last year, I think on an Italian label perhaps. But yeah, so quite a limited run, but definitely worth picking up. I think you can find it on Amazon at the moment actually, so and not too expensive, so definitely worth checking out. Right, okay, this is an album by Quantic and Alice Russell. The album's called Look Around the Corner. Probably about 10 years old now, this one. Quantic has been making records for about 20 years now, sort of a big name in the UK soul scene. Yeah, what he does really well is that sort of retro soul sound. Now, a lot of the time I have a real problem with that sort of thing because, yeah, it often sounds really forced, you know, people just trying to, you know, make modern music but incorporating that retro sound. He does it really well. I mean, I'm going to do a needle drop on the title track, and I think that track in particular could have been recorded any time over the last 30 or 40 years. It's got a real rotary connection sound going on with it. But yeah, Alice Russell as well, you know, a great UK soul vocalist. And yeah, this is a really nice record, one that I go back to quite a lot. He moved to Colombia for a period of time, and you know the music from that country certainly came into his music. There's a real Latin influence on this album, and I think one of his more recent albums as well. I think his last album's got that same sort of thing going on. But yeah, an interesting guy, and as I say, a record that's worth checking out. Okay, right, so there's one band which I've mentioned a lot over the last 2 to 3 years. That's Ill Considered, and I think during that period of time they've probably made, I don't know, 7 or 8 albums. But for me, this is their debut, and this is still their best. I'm going to do a needle drop on the opening track on this one, I'll say at the end of the video. And it's that track that got me interested in this band. Yeah, so I follow Jazzman Records on Facebook, and one day they put up a post basically saying they got this new album in by this London-based group, and they couldn't believe they had any copies left because it was so good. They basically said it's the best thing that they'd heard in years. So obviously I clicked on the link, and so within 20 seconds I was sold. It's the groove, it's the groove that the bass and the drums get going. That's what attracts me to the band. I mean, it's largely free jazz, but all of the pieces of music are based around a set groove. It's almost like a hypnotic rhythm that the rhythm section get going. I love it. So I say some records are better than others, and this for me is still the best one. If you haven't heard it, check it out. I know it's been reissued a few times. I like the way they release their music as well. Everything comes out on vinyl, limited runs of I think it's normally 300 copies. There have been subsequent presses, but once again short runs. But all of the albums have this similar artwork. The same guy designs all the sleeves, and again, it's that whole thing. It just makes it attractive for, you know, a record geek like me, you know. So I think it's so well done, and I say I can't recommend this album enough. So this is probably about 3 years old now, but very cool. Right, okay. So one of my favourite albums the last few years is an album by Nat Birchall called Sounds Almighty. Slightly different from what he was known for at the time. He's predominantly known as a jazz musician, but this album was just a big fat dub album, big fat dub reggae album, and it was brilliant. And he followed it up this year, beginning of this year, with this album, Tradition Disc in Dub. And this is Nat Birchall meets Al Breadwinner. I think privately pressed, fairly limited run on the Tradition Disc label. Yeah, it's more of the same, wonderful arrangements. Yeah, I say definitely one of my favourite releases from this year. But interestingly, a few months after that, after lockdown happened, and because of the COVID situation, like most musicians, or like all musicians, he was unable to tour. That's how he makes his money. So he announced on his Facebook page that he was going to put out an album. So this is an album that would not have happened had it not been for COVID. And the reason being is that he plays all of the instruments himself. Obviously, it's a situation that he's been forced into. He was saying that he wasn't sure whether it was a wise idea to do that, whether it would be good enough. But I think this is, again, a lovely album. I think he's one of the most interesting musicians in the UK today. He's doing some really interesting stuff. This is heavily influenced by Sun Ra. Was quite, I think, was meant to be a pressing of 500 copies, which I think was increased to 1,000 copies once the demand was there. Obviously, he's done it to make money, to feed his kids, as he said, you know, so I've got no bother with that. But yeah, a really nice record. You can still get hold of it. Again, privately pressed, nice custom label there. I'm going to do another drop, probably on one of the albums, probably not on both, but one of them. But again, I would just urge you to seek these out. Sherv mentioned in his video that I think he showed an earlier Nat Birchall album, which he wasn't keen on. I think he felt that it was too close to John Coltrane without really adding anything new. If you like reggae, you like dub music, check out these two dub albums. And as I say, this spiritual jazz album that he's put out this year, if you like Sun Ra, that's your sort of thing. It's definitely worth picking up as well. So there you go. Cheers.